Now, for some analysis, let's bring in aviation expert Mark Miller, who joins us now on the line. Mark, thank you so much for joining us in what we know is a very busy day for you and all aviation experts alike. First off, what do you make of the crash?
Well, we're heartbroken. Many of us who've worked with the Snowbirds for years and flown with them for years, we were looking forward to seeing them flying over our homes and celebrating the hard work and dedication that so many people in the healthcare field have done to help protect us. And, the Snowbirds have had their air show season canceled, and they had adapted to do these flyovers. And, you can see coast to coast. It was a great celebration, and this is just heartbreaking. This is certainly not what anybody ever dreamed would happen.
Absolutely. And Mark, we know it's early and we don't want to speculate, but we also know that you are an aviation expert. When you look at that video of the crash and what went wrong, it's clear that something went wrong in a matter of seconds. We could see those occupants of that plane eject just moments after takeoff. Any thoughts or possibilities from your perspective of what may have caused this crash or what might have gone wrong here?
I thought Jordan did a really good job of talking us through the footage there just before the commercial break. You're in a very low energy state there on takeoff. The airplane is slow. You're rolling just off the runway there, and maybe 100, 200 feet, you can see the pilot starts to pull up. And when I was flying with the team, I was trained on my ejection seat and trained to be prepared for a problem. And that was always kind of the most dangerous part of the flight in my mind. And I think everybody would agree. You're not going very fast. So if that engine did quit or there was an issue with the engine, there is only one engine in the tutor jet. You're a glider. And so you try to get as much altitude as you can, and then you pull the ejection seats. And so I'm just watching the footage here as he climbs up, and he doesn't really get very high, and then he rolls over, and then they pull the seat. And sure would have been nice to see those seats come out earlier, it certainly made me feel almost nauseous watching it.
Yeah, and Mark, you referenced Jordan's coverage earlier and some analysis, obviously just from the layperson's perspective, but he mentioned you see that plane, it takes off, and then it suddenly veers upwards, which some people on the ground might have thought was part of the Snowbirds act. But it seems to us, and from our perspective, that pilot was trying to gain elevation, as you said, so that those parachutes could actually deploy. Is that your perspective on that as well?
Totally. I thought Jordan nailed it, and I've talked to a number of my friends who have been on the team in the past and who I've flown with, and we all, this is pretty much what you're supposed to do. It just would have been nice to pull those seats earlier and have gotten out at the sort of the top of the apex there.
And we were talking here in the Global BC newsroom about, after watching that video, the occupants of that plane reacted within seconds and ejected within seconds. Surely something that I imagine pilots and occupants of planes train for on a regular basis through dry runs, but obviously hope to never actually have to employ in their careers in practice.
I may be corrected here, but I'm not sure that there's any real way to practice for an ejection. You're certainly not going to go up in an airplane and pull the handles to come out just for practice.
Yeah.
And every time I flew with the team, and I flew with them dozens and dozens of times, making some of these documentaries we made over the years, that was always in the back of my mind, is would I know what to do when the pilot called eject, eject, eject? And the airplane I fly today, I wear a parachute, and if I have a problem, I have to jump out. And, boy, that's a tough choice. Do you try to ride the thing to the ground and get back to the ground, or do you eject? Well, in the Canadian military, when you're in this situation, you're taught automatically to pull those handles once you zoom up, and that's what they did.
Split-second thinking by who we know are highly trained professionals in the Canadian Forces. Mark, again, we don't want to speculate, but your thoughts on whether this could have been mechanical, whether weather could have been an issue here. We had a fellow journalist on the scene saying he saw a lot of birds and geese in the area before takeoff. Any thoughts on that?
I looked at the video, and that's the first thing that came to mind was a bird strike. You're close to the ground. That's where the birds are. And but usually when you hit a bird in a jet like that, you'll usually see a little puff of smoke or something come out the back. Now, granted, the quality of the video isn't great, but it could have just been, could have been a fuel problem. It could have been any number of things. But I would venture to start looking at the engine and whether or not it was making power. So, yeah.
And we know, and you would know better than we do, that these planes may be old, but that does not mean they're unsafe. They're put through, rigorous mechanical inspections and routine maintenance, especially on a journey like this, a voyage like Operation Inspiration. Have you ever seen anything like this in your career, Mark? Can you maybe tell us about, the work and the maintenance work that does go into keeping these planes in prime condition for a journey like this?
Yeah, well, it was one of the things that we focused on in our first documentary was the maintenance, and they have kept it flying in near new condition. And this is really because of the amazing technicians that they have on the ground who spend countless hours, often are kind of the unsung heroes of the air show industry. They work through the night. I remember one night we were in Comox and preparing for practice, a very important practice, and they had to swap out an engine. And I remember them saying, there's a problem with this engine. We can't fly with it. It's not safe. And I was like, well, that airplane's not going to fly. Well, within 24 hours, they had a brand new engine in there, and the airplane was back safe in the air, test flow, and ready to rejoin the formation. And that just really speaks to the professionalism of the Snowbirds and what they represent in terms of managing risk and reducing risk as much as they can for everybody involved.
And Mark, we know that Operation Inspiration was meant to inspire Canadians. The Snowbirds took off in Atlantic Canada. They were flying right across the country to inspire the country in what is arguably an incredibly difficult time for so many Canadians as we live under a global pandemic through the COVID-19 crisis. Obviously, investigators are going to be on scene as soon as they can, looking into exactly what went wrong here. From your perspective, how will the COVID-19 crisis and the threat of transmission perhaps impact the investigation here?
I'm not a COVID expert, so I don't really know. I know that already the majority of the team members were on the ground when this happened. They hadn't departed yet for Comox. So there are some professionals there. In fact, in your video, you can see some of them walking around the scene from the team that are already securing information and collecting data. They'll look back at the past maintenance records of the airplane. They'll look and see if there was something that was being worked on with the airplane in the previous days as they were coming across the country. They'll be able to piece together what happened as well. You also have the pilot that was flying, to the right. He was the lead in that formation. He'll have heard something on the radio. The pilot who was flying the airplane may be able to provide some information. So I think we'll be able to piece together fairly quickly what happened here, and I'm not sure that COVID will have a big impact. But again, I'm not an expert.
Okay, so many questions remain. Mark Miller, thank you for your expertise, and thank you for joining us on the line this afternoon.
Yes, and thanks for the support that Global's given everybody across the country covering this story of the team coming across. I think that's the positive thing here, is that they've touched a lot of people over the last few weeks.
Absolutely, and our thoughts, of course, are with the Canadian Forces and with the Snowbirds today and every day, but especially today on what we know is a tragic day for the Canadian Forces. Mark Miller, aviation expert, thank you so much for joining us.